There's a moment almost no one talks about. It's quiet, it's subtle, and it happens right after someone you love makes you feel small and then smiles like nothing happened. You tell yourself, they didn't mean it. You say, it's just their personality. You even laugh, not because it's funny, but because staying silent feels safer than facing the truth. Here's the hard reality. Not everyone who is close to you is safe for you. And not everyone who says, I love you, is capable of loving you in a healthy way. We're taught that loyalty means endurance, that family means tolerance, that strength means staying. But what if that belief is quietly destroying your self-respect? What if the very people you keep protecting are slowly teaching you to betray yourself? Stoicism never asked you to become cold. It asked you to become clear. Because peace without boundaries is not peace, it is quiet surrender. Today we're going to walk through 6 toxic behaviors you should never tolerate, not even from family. Not to create conflict, not to assign blame, but to give you back something you may have been losing for years. Your calm, your clarity, your strength. Let's begin. Number 1, disrespect disguised as jokes. It usually doesn't arrive as cruelty. It arrives as laughter. A comment slipped into the room like a needle in silk. A joke about your goals. A joke about your body. A joke about the life you're trying to build. Everyone else laughs, so you laugh too. Not because it's funny, but because correcting them feels heavier than swallowing the sting. Because calling it out feels like starting a war you don't want to fight. So you choose the easier path, silence. But here is the uncomfortable truth most people miss. Every time you laugh along, you teach them how to treat you. This is not about humor, this is about hierarchy. Behavioral psychology shows that what goes unchallenged becomes normalized. The nervous system learns patterns faster than the mind does. When disrespect is wrapped in humor, your body still registers it as a threat, even if your mouth says, it's fine. Over time, something quiet happens. Your confidence erodes. Your self-trust thins. You begin to filter your words, soften your presence, shrink your dreams. Not because they told you to, but because your system is learning where it is not safe to expand. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. The Stoics understood something deeply. What we tolerate becomes our inner climate. So ask yourself, if a stranger spoke to you this way, would you still laugh? Or would your body instantly recognize the violation? Disrespect disguised as jokes is quiet poison. It doesn't scream, it seeps. And the tragedy is not that others say it. The tragedy is that you start believing you deserve it. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They think the solution is confrontation, debates, explaining why the comment hurt. But explanation invites negotiation, and negotiation invites more disrespect. Stoic strength is quieter than that. The most powerful response is not words, it is non-reaction. A steady gaze, a pause, silence that does not apologize for existing. Because when you remove the emotional reward, the behavior loses oxygen. No anger, no defense, no performance, just presence. Doors have locks. Healthy people knock. And when someone repeatedly ignores the door, you don't argue with them. You stop opening. This is not coldness. This is self-respect in its calmest form. And here's the deeper truth. People who rely on mockery to feel superior are revealing a fragile inner world. They do not need your compliance. They need your contrast. So do not harden. Do not shrink. Do not perform. Stand quietly where you are. Because once you stop teaching others that they can cross you without consequence, everything begins to shift. And when disrespect is no longer rewarded, another pattern often emerges, one far more subtle and far more powerful. It hides not in jokes, but in guilt. Number 2, emotional manipulation, the quiet weapon of guilt. It rarely sounds like control. It sounds like disappointment. I thought you cared. After everything I've done for you, you've changed. The words are soft, but they land like weights on your chest. You replay the conversation in your mind, not to understand them, but to prosecute yourself. What did I do wrong? Why do I feel like the villain, even when I told the truth? That's the trap. Emotional manipulation doesn't attack your actions. It attacks your identity. It doesn't argue with facts. It rewrites the story in your imagination. You start carrying guilt for things you never chose. You feel responsible for emotions that are not yours to manage. And slowly, you trade clarity for approval. This is why guilt is such a powerful weapon. The brain is wired to avoid social rejection. Studies in behavioral psychology show that perceived disapproval activates the same neural circuits as physical pain. So when someone implies you are selfish, cold, or ungrateful, your nervous system reacts as if you are in danger. But here is the Stoic truth. You are not required to be understood to be right. Epictetus wrote, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults.'" The Stoics did not seek approval. They sought alignment with truth. Guilt manipulators thrive on one illusion, that your worth depends on their interpretation. But they are not reacting to reality. They are reacting to the version of you they invented, the one that exists only in their expectations. So ask yourself, how many of your decisions were actually yours, and how many were made to avoid someone else's disappointment? Here's where most people make the mistake. They try to explain. They defend. They plead to be seen clearly. But clarity is not something you can force someone to receive. The Stoic response is not argument. It is grounded stillness. When guilt is used as a lever, you do not push back. You release it. You say nothing. You do not justify. You do not shrink. Because the moment you stop negotiating your reality, the illusion collapses. And something remarkable happens. Your nervous system begins to feel safe again. Not because others approve, but because you are no longer betraying yourself to be accepted. This is not selfishness. This is sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or do, or think. When you stand rooted in your own truth, guilt loses its power to move you. And once that lever breaks, another pattern often reveals itself. One that doesn't pull at your conscience, but drains your life force. Let's look at what happens when someone feeds on your emotional energy. Number 3, constant negativity. When their pain becomes your prison. At first it feels like concern. They vent, they complain, they share the same problems again and again. You listen, you nod, you try to help, but nothing changes. The stories repeat. The anger lingers. The air feels heavier every time they speak. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to feel tired before the conversation even starts. That's the signal. Chronic negativity is not an emotional state. It is a pattern of identity. Some people don't want relief. They want resonance. They don't want solutions. They want witnesses. So they keep reopening the same wounds. Not to heal, but to feel alive through reaction. Psychologists sometimes call this emotional contagion. Your nervous system mirrors theirs. Their stress becomes your stress. Their hopelessness becomes your internal weather. This is why after time with them, you don't feel supported, you feel depleted. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not be dragged by the soul of another." Negativity is not loud, it is draining. It doesn't attack, it erodes. And here is the truth most people resist. You cannot save someone who is addicted to their own suffering. Trying to fix them does not make you noble, it makes you available. Ask yourself, when you offer a solution, do they reject it? When you encourage growth, do they change the subject? When you set boundaries, do they pull you back into the storm? That's not vulnerability, that's emotional dependence. So what is the Stoic response? Not confrontation, not correction, withdrawal of participation. You stop feeding the loop. No arguing, no convincing, no emotional labor. You don't announce your exit, you reduce your exposure. Shorter conversations, fewer explanations, more silence. Because what you allow into your inner world shapes who you become. And when you remain inside someone else's storm too long, you forget what your own calm feels like. This is not cruelty, this is hygiene. You wouldn't breathe toxic air and call it compassion. So why absorb emotional poison and call it loyalty? Let the storm be theirs. You were not meant to live inside it. And when you stop playing the role of emotional sponge, another pattern often surfaces. One that doesn't drain your energy, but denies your reality. Let's look at what happens when someone refuses to take responsibility. Number 4, lack of accountability. When apologies never arrive and patterns never change. It begins with confusion. You try to explain what hurt you. You speak calmly. You choose your words carefully. And somehow, you end up apologizing. The story shifts. Your pain becomes too sensitive. Your boundary becomes too harsh. Their behavior disappears, and you become the problem. This is not misunderstanding. This is inversion. Psychologists call it blame shifting. The ego cannot face itself without fracturing, so it redirects the discomfort outward. And when someone lacks accountability, they don't see mistakes as lessons. They see them as threats. So they deny, they deflect, they distort. And here's the quiet danger. When patterns stay the same, forgiveness becomes permission. Not because you said it was okay, but because nothing changed. Marcus Aurelius warned, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Stoicism never asked you to endure the same wound in the name of peace. It asked you to observe reality clearly. So ask yourself, have their words changed or only your tolerance? Because remorse is not language, it is behavior. And when behavior does not shift, your nervous system learns to brace for impact. You start preparing for harm before it happens. You walk on eggshells. You shrink to stay safe. This is how self-betrayal becomes a lifestyle. Now here is where people get trapped. They keep asking for apologies, but apologies from someone who won't change are not healing. They are anesthesia. They numb you just enough to stay. The Stoic response is not protest, it is pattern recognition. You stop debating motives. You stop interpreting words. You watch actions. And when the same cycle repeats, you don't argue with the storm. You step away from it. No anger, no speeches, no dramatic exits, just distance. Because distance is not punishment, it is information. It tells your nervous system, I will not remain where harm is normalized. This is not about revenge, it is about self-respect. And once you stop trying to be understood by those who refuse to change, another behavior often reveals itself. One that hides behind smiles, but resents your growth. Let's look at what happens when envy wears a friendly mask. Number 5, envy and hidden competition. When applause hides resentment. At first they seem supportive. They smile when you speak about your goals. They nod when you share a small victory. But something shifts when you begin to grow. Their compliments become quieter. Their jokes become sharper. Their energy changes, not outwardly hostile, but subtly cold. You feel it before you can explain it. A tension in the room, a distance in the eyes. And you wonder, am I imagining this? Here's the Stoic truth. Not everyone who claps wants you to win. Envy rarely announces itself. It hides behind politeness. It dresses itself as concern. It masks resentment as humor. But beneath it lies comparison. And comparison, when unchecked, becomes hostility. Psychologists describe this as status threat. When your growth challenges someone's self-image, your success becomes a mirror they don't want to face. So instead of celebrating you, they compete silently. They downplay your progress. They change the subject. They remind you of your past. And the more you explain, the more power you give away. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others, when you do not refer your thoughts to some object of common utility." Envy feeds on attention. It starves in silence. So the Stoic strategy is not defense. It is non-disclosure. You stop sharing dreams with people who secretly hope you fail. You stop proving. You stop justifying. You move forward quietly, not because you are hiding, but because your path does not require witnesses. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. When someone resents your growth, it is not your responsibility to shrink so they can feel comfortable. Growth will always disturb those who chose stagnation. So you do not argue. You do not confront. You do not announce. You simply continue. Because success is loud enough on its own. And when you no longer seek approval from those who cannot celebrate you, you become unreachable to their resentment. Now there is one final behavior, the most controlling of all. It does not hide. It does not whisper. It crosses the line. Let's look at what happens when someone refuses to respect your boundaries. Number 6, disrespecting boundaries. When love becomes control. It starts the moment you say no. Not loudly, not angrily, just clearly. And they push, they question, they guilt you. They step over the line you just drew, as if your boundary were a suggestion instead of a decision. This is the final truth most people avoid. When someone repeatedly violates your limits, it is not love, it is control. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors, and healthy people knock. When someone refuses to knock, you do not owe them a debate. The Stoic response is simple, not because it is easy, but because it is clear. No explanations, no anger, no justification, only action. Distance is not cruelty, it is alignment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Today you've seen 6 quiet poisons, 6 ways people drain, distort, and diminish without ever raising their voice. And maybe now you see what was once invisible. You were never too sensitive. You were perceiving. You were never selfish. You were waking up. You were never wrong for wanting peace. You were ready to protect it. Stoicism is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming unshakable, calm, grounded, clear. And when you live this way, you no longer chase understanding. You choose integrity. If this message resonated with you, you're not alone. Here at Psychology of Stoics, we explore the tools to help you become calm in chaos, steady in uncertainty, and strong without noise. If you're ready to live from clarity instead of guilt, from strength instead of fear, subscribe and walk this path with us. Because peace is not found in tolerance, it is built through boundaries.